So welcome everyone to the workshop today, and I'm so pleased that you're here, everyone that's here live and everyone that's watching the replay. Today we're going to be talking about the concept of whether or not you should modify contact with a narcissistic parent. So everybody here, I'm assuming, is either knows or suspects that they may have a narcissistic parent. And you're wondering, you're already wondering, if you're here, whether or not I should make changes in the way that I am communicating with and interacting with this parent, or how I'm allowing this parent to communicate and interact with me. And on top of that, we're also talking about, how is the lack of that actually affecting your ability to be a successful transformation professional, meaning success in your business, whatever that looks like for you. Okay. And so I feel like this is such an important topic to discuss. And it goes beyond just talking, it's beyond just talking about our business success, but it's so much more than that. Yet they're connected, they're tied together. And I feel like that this is just one entry point for healing, because I've found for myself and for so many people that I work with is that probably if it hadn't have been for their really deep desire to make a difference in the world through their business, through their profession as a transformation or healing or helping professional, they wouldn't be motivated to make the changes in their life that they need to in order to successfully do that. And so that includes cleaning up unhealthy relationships in their life and being able to really see the truth about how those relationships, no matter who they're with, might be impacting their ability to be successful at what they do and make a difference in other people's lives. So I just feel like it's, be grateful that you're here and that you're at the place you are in your life, because this is an opportunity for you to really grow and to really make an impact in your own life and others, and to have a ripple effect on everyone around you and everyone around them. And just it keeps going and going, even though it seems like it's very personal. It seems like this issue it's a personal issue we're dealing with, right? Whether or not we should modify contact with a parent. That seems very, very personal, and it is. But it also has a ripple effect on the world as well. So there's like a larger view on it. Okay, so with that being said, go to my next slide here. Trying to go to my next slide. Where did it go? Sorry. Okay. All right. So here's the deal. Okay, I'm just going to be really, really straightforward with all of you, and I'm going to make this super simple, because it really is. It's actually very, very simple. Okay. Truth. If you are an adult child of a narcissist and you have not set healthy boundaries, like you just haven't addressed that at all, you're just letting it be what it is for whatever reason, there's no judgment, but you've just been operating, on this kind of autopilot around this relationship for a long time. And the truth is, you're likely, very, very likely, you're getting triggered by this parent in ways you don't realize. Now, you probably are getting triggered by this parent in ways you do realize. You're probably aware of, but there's also an impact that it has on you that you may not realize. And as a transformation professional, I know, again, it's really important for you to be successful at what you do. But your inner child keeps getting in the way, and your inner child is getting triggered by this parent that's in your life and is interacting. Your inner child is interacting with the parent as though you were in the past. Okay. Just in case you don't know me, some of you may know me, but some of you may not. I have helped hundreds of coaches healing and helping professionals to unleash their potential for peace, purpose, and prosperity. All of it. Peace, purpose, and prosperity. You get to have it all by learning to release narcissistic trauma. I am a narcissistic trauma healing expert. I am the creator of the Heartshine EFT method. I'm a certified clinical EFT and energy psychology practitioner, and I also serve as an EFT Universe certification mentor. Just a little disclaimer, this is completely just for education. I am not a licensed mental health professional or a doctor, and no content in this workshop should be construed as medical advice or a substitute for professional mental health care. Okay? All right. So let's just jump in. What is a narcissistic parent? Any parent or parent figure who engages in a narcissistic dynamic with their child. It's very, very simple. Keep in mind that narcissists are pathologically jealous. Okay, they're pathologically jealous. And therefore, narcissistic parents are pathologically jealous of their children. Of course they are, because if they're pathologically jealous, they're not going to be different with their children than they are with anyone else in their life. And they're not going to be different with their children when they're young than they are with their children when they're adults. And narcissists don't see people in their life as for who they really are. They see them as the role they play. They see them as the object that they view them as, that there's objectification. So typically what happens is a narcissistic parent will still see you as that young version of you when you were young, when you were a young child, and will tend to relate to you like that, and will tend to not go through like the healthy kind of transition that like normal, some of the word normal, healthy parents who are self-aware will go through when their children start to grow up, and they go through different phases with their children. And eventually they learn to navigate that relationship. Once that child grows up and becomes an adult, they learn to navigate it, and they relate to their adult child as an adult, respecting their sovereignty, their autonomy, their ability to be on their own. They give them like unconditional love, no matter what, just like they should when they were young. They still continue to do that. They learn how to navigate the relationship in a healthy way. They relate to their adult child as an adult. That's normal and healthy, but narcissistic parents cannot do this. And therefore, it creates a very unhealthy dynamic in the relationship. Let's just look at some clues that you are in a narcissistic dynamic with anyone, but we're talking about a parent right now. So here's some clues if you're not sure that you might be in a narcissistic dynamic with a parent. Okay, this is a very difficult person. This is very common for this relationship, especially when others are observing it, to just label it as difficult. Now, there are difficult relationships in your life, right? That's just because somebody might be difficult doesn't mean they're narcissistic. However, that is a common sort of mislabeling of that kind of relationship. So just be aware that if someone's difficult, like just ongoing all the time, and there's no resolution, it's just the difficulty is always there, and there's no way to resolve or communicate around that difficulty, then it's probably not just difficulty. Okay. A relationship is draining. Okay, think about if this relationship is one in which you have to get ready to interact with this parent, like you have to get ready somehow. So in some way you have to kind of suit up. You've got to put your armor on. You've got to make sure you're not tired, or you have to make sure you're not vulnerable, or in some way you have to change yourself. You have to make yourself safer in order to be around them, in order to interact with them. When you see their phone number on your phone, you see them calling, you become tense, you may become anxious because you know that this interaction is not safe. You know it deep inside yourself. Even if you don't want to admit it to yourself, you can feel it. Because you can feel the difference, say, when someone else calls you, like a friend that you do feel safe with. You see that they're calling you and you're like, oh, so-and-so's calling me, and you answer. But when you see this parent's phone number, you see that they're texting or calling you, you're just like, oh, right. You're just like, God. And this is not a sign of a healthy relationship, because a relationship should not drain you. Okay, now that doesn't mean that sometimes you might not just be tired or fatigued from what's going on in your life, and maybe you might have an interaction every once in a while with someone in your life in which afterwards you feel a little drained. Again, this is something where if it's just constant, it's constant, and even so much so that sometimes you get sick after you interact with this person. If you're around them for a longer periods of time, and maybe it's kind of a deal where if you just talk to them on the phone every once in a while, it's not so bad. But then when maybe you go visit, or you're around them all day, and then the next day you feel like you have a hangover. You feel like you have a hangover, or you actually get physically sick or something like that. That's a really common thing. Okay. All right, so you're also taking full responsibility for managing the relationship, meaning you feel like everything is your responsibility, and also when things go wrong, it's your fault. So this person isn't happy, it's your fault. This person becomes dysregulated, it's your fault. You haven't done enough. You haven't, you're not doing things right. You're not paying enough attention to them. You're being selfish. You're not being enlightened enough. Maybe you just don't have enough skills, that you're not managing the relationship well enough, that it's not going well. And that's a sign that you're in a narcissistic dynamic, because a narcissist will always project blame on you, and everything will always be your fault, whether they're completely in your face about that, or whether they're being very passive aggressive or covert or vulnerable about that. Either way, they're going to allow you to always take full responsibility for everything that happens in the relationship. And if you're hiding your efforts for self-improvement from this person, or any family member or spouse, it doesn't really matter, but it can apply to anyone, or even just in general, you're just hiding. You're just hiding because maybe it's coming from the dynamic with the parent, but because of that long-standing pattern of not feeling safe when you're wanting to grow and change and be different and step out and be self-differentiated and be on your own, stand in your own power, you feel unsafe, and you don't want to share that for fear of judgment or criticism or punishment. So you're hiding it. You're just you're keeping it to yourself, or you're actually hiding it. And that's another sign. Rationalizing other people's poor behavior. Just kind of trying to explain things away. And well, sometimes this can be a completely valid thing to do, is to rationalize around someone else's behavior. That's not necessarily unhealthy. However, in a narcissistic dynamic, what happens is we're so used to making excuses for this person, and our inner child is trying to take responsibility for their healing. And so we will rationalize, well, they had a hard life, or their childhood was really bad, or they're going through a really hard time and things are really difficult for them, and I know I haven't done this or that, and so I can understand why they would behave this way. That is rationalizing their behavior and not holding them accountable for the fact that they're responsible for their behavior. We're just going to take that on. That's what we do. Another sign, and these are just some signs, but these are some major ones, is attunement with other people's feelings before your own. And this just comes from that experience in childhood where you had dysregulated parents, one or more, and you were always having to tune into them before yourself. You didn't even know how to tune into yourself because you got so good at tuning into them and being ready for the shift in their mood, for the change, whether that, was actually going to become physically dangerous, emotionally dangerous, whatever it is, but you were always ready. And so you're really good at tuning into other people's needs. So you're always tuning into your parents' needs, even as an adult, before you actually tune into yourself and think, actually, what am I feeling right now? Right? That's a very common thing. Okay. Let's just go over some subtle signs of narcissistic trauma. So as a result of being in this dynamic with a parent over a long period of time, there are some subtle signs that you may have narcissistic trauma. And I call these subtle because it's not something necessarily causes you not to function necessarily, but they're subtle, and we can kind of just keep going, and we can seem high functional and high performing, and we can show up for other people. But these signs actually are what's causing us to not be able to get traction in our business, to not be able to get unstuck and move forward and like really truly own our power and go out there in the world and do what we're meant to do, because we can get easily overwhelmed and confused. This comes from, like, in childhood, we were typically confused a lot because we were being gaslit by our parents. If it was an actual coming from a narcissistic dynamic, then it was an actual attempt to undermine our sense of reality. Now, maybe if it wasn't that, maybe even if it was just a well-meaning parent that just was having trouble really being truthful with us and expressing their emotions, it could be something as simple as, if you think about when a child is really tuned into their parent and, they can see that maybe their mom is sad. They can feel that their mom is sad. And then they say, "Mommy, I'm sorry you're sad." Because children are, they're really giving like that, and they want to reach out and connect with you and help you. And then the mom says, "Oh, no, honey, I'm not sad. I'm fine. And even though that's not necessarily a narcissistic dynamic, but the child stops and doubts himself, like, wait a minute, I just felt my mom was sad, but now she's telling me it's not true. And she's just trying maybe to protect the child. She doesn't want to admit that she feels sad or whatever it is, but that right there undermines the child's sense of reality and trust in their ability to instinctively and intuitively know what other people are feeling or what's happening in their environment. So they become confused, and then they doubt themselves. It's also a way to protect ourselves from the truth. So if we're feeling the truth of what's happening in this relationship, but it's too much to accept or take in because we're too young, we just stay confused about it. We just stay confused because it's safer to stay confused than to get clear about the truth of what's happening or what happened. And this becomes overwhelming. So now in adulthood, we're just in our life, and we're sort of come up against these things we do in our business, let's say, trying to make decisions about which way to go or what website to use or what marketing tool to use, or whether I should take this course or that course. And then we just get overwhelmed and confused, and we can't move forward. And it's not really actually the choices we're looking at in the moment. It's that pattern of, trying to stay confused in order to keep safe. Okay, people pleasing. This is a form of fawning, which is a stress response. So it is a stress response that it can be very common. So people pleasing just looks like, just always wanting to make sure everyone else is okay. So if you're people pleasing with your parent, you're constantly making sure that they are pleased with you, and you're trying to disarm them, by being nice or friendly or funny or charming, or just you want to appear like not threatening, essentially. That's essentially what that is, oh, I'm not a threat to you. I'm not a threat. I'm just going to take care of your needs, or I'm just going to make sure you're happy. And this is a way of keeping ourselves safe. But unfortunately, in our business, it can really be detrimental, because we can end up not having good boundaries. This is trouble setting boundaries. This goes into the next one. Not being able to have good boundaries with our clients, with other people we're working with our colleagues. We might just end up overworking, over delivering, overworking, undercharging, doing things we don't really want to do, maybe taking on projects or clients or work that we don't really enjoy, just because of fear of not pleasing people. And this is not healthy. And this will lead to burnout and resentment. We have a lack of trust in ourselves and others because we were betrayed as children. Our childhood trauma is we were betrayed in so many ways through the narcissistic dynamic. Like I said, narcissistic parents are pathologically jealous of their children, and they will undermine their children's success time and time again, and then they will undermine their adult children's success time and time again. So if you think about that, fundamental relationship is like, that we should be able to trust that parent no matter what. That's our source when we're children. And if we learn we can't trust the parent, then when we grow up, we can't trust anything, because that was our source, and we never learned to source ourselves. And so we just have a total lack of trust in life, in ourselves, and in everyone around us. And it shows up as, having difficulty being able to, make business decisions, get into relationships with clients, with colleagues, with coworkers, the ability to trust our decisions about how to move forward. Even the tiniest decision about like whether I should, write this copy this way or that way. I mean, it can come down to really minute things you can just get really stuck on because you're not trusting yourself. You're constantly doubting yourself and criticizing yourself. You've internalized criticism from a parent, most likely, a lot of criticism. It's a very typical narcissistic trait, is to be highly critical. And an extreme fear of failure and success, which is interesting too, like being afraid to fail, being afraid to make a mistake, because that's not safe. That's pretty obvious. But being afraid to succeed is definitely something that happens because, again, if your success outshines the narcissistic parent, if your success somehow threatens their superiority, or their them being smart and good and all the things, whatever it is for them that they think that they're better at than you, that success that you might be having is going to really threaten them. So your inner child is going to be terrified of being successful with this parent in your life in some way. There's a fear of being visible. Being visible isn't always safe, because being visible can lead to punishment, criticism, rejection, betrayal, and a chronic dismissal of your accomplishments. Oh my God, this is such a common one. Just not being able to really see our own gifts and talents. A lot of times, because things come naturally to us, we're very gifted at helping others, and we have these talents, but we just dismiss them because it doesn't matter. If you have a parent that's not going to acknowledge your accomplishments or your abilities as a child, then why would you bother acknowledging your accomplishments as an adult? Because why does it even matter? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So let's talk about now, let's switch over and just talk about what some ways this relationship can look like. And this is coming from the narcissistic parent. So in the dynamic between the adult child and the narcissistic parent, I want to talk about some grandiose expressions. And I know hopefully some of you all understand these terms, grandiose and vulnerable. I'm not going to go deep into that because I'm assuming you've already gotten to some of my other content. But in the grandiose expression, it's overt, it's in your face, it's obvious. It's out there. You can't not see it. So this is going to show up as your parent expressing superiority, superiority in general, and also maybe superiority over you, because they don't want to feel inferior. They have a need to feel superior in order to be safe. So they're going to be belittling your expertise. That's very overt. That can show up as like actually somehow criticizing your area of expertise, or making jokes, being sarcastic, or having, which is hidden contempt. So I mean, sarcasm is typically contempt covered with humor. So it's like a disguised version of contempt. So if you have a parent that may use sarcasm as a way to undermine your sense of self, they're expressing their contempt for your success and for you being autonomous with sarcasm, with jabs, things like that. They may be acting like that's funny, but it's actually, it doesn't feel good, because you can feel, when someone's actually being funny and joking and they're well-meaning, and when someone is using a sarcastic remark to undermine, you can feel it in your gut. Like when you say you get a gut punch, you can feel it in your gut. Dismissing your goals, just completely dismissing that you have goals, that you might have something you're striving towards. Narcissists are continually turning the conversation back towards themselves. So you might be trying to talk about your business goals or things you're doing, and you're just going to get dismissed. It's not that they're not going to see that as important. And this is nothing new. You also might see actual, like, real anger in response to you setting boundaries. So if you said you set some boundaries, like maybe you've got a lot of things to accomplish. Let's say, you need to be working, or you need to be doing something in your business that takes your attention away from them. So you have to set a boundary. You have to say no, or you have to say, I can't do that, or whatever it is. And then they actually become angry. And it's very obvious that they're angry. So that's a real grandiose expression in that dynamic. Okay. And again, these are just some examples. There's so many ways it can show up, but I'm just thinking like the ones that I know of personally, and I've heard through my clients, and I've seen through other individuals that I know. Okay. Let's talk about the vulnerable expressions in a narcissistic dynamic, which is the vulnerable side, right? Is when we talk about that flip from grandiose to vulnerable, that's covert. That's kind of what you can't see. That's the victim expression of the narcissistic dynamic. So this is going to show up as the parent expressing victimhood. And think about, and because we're talking about your business, how is your business success and what you're doing in your business causing them to be harmed? They're a victim of it, whether that's, oh, poor me, you never have time for me anymore, or, oh, poor me, I just wish that I could do that, what you do, but I just, I'm not that smart, and people don't value me, so poor me. So there's just always this victimhood mixed in with the communication around when you're talking about your business and what you're doing. Undermining your value. So this is like, you see how this is kind of similar to belittling your expertise, but it's sort of, it's the flip side. It's like, it's very passive aggressive. So it can show up as, say, maybe you're talking about something that you know about, like your area of expertise, and then the parent might just say, yeah, okay, I know, but so-and-so did it this way, and that was fine, so there's this, it's not so overt, it's not just this direct criticism, but it's just this constant undermining of your value. You're probably all thinking, I know, I've experienced this before, I know what this is. Backhanded compliments. Backhanded compliments, to me, what that means is, it's like they give you a compliment, they may acknowledge something, but they're right on the back end of that, there's something else completely different. So like, oh, congratulations, on that, getting that new client. I just sure hope you can keep that going, since, last time you did that, it didn't work. See, so like backhanded compliments. That's a very vulnerable expression. It's a very underhanded, kind of passive aggressive. Here's something interesting, taking credit for your accomplishments. So this is something I feel like this one is so sneaky. It's just so sneaky, because what will happen is this particular kind of narcissist, they won't just try to just completely undermine you, directly to your face. And sometimes they may feel like what they can do, what actually will get them more supply, or what might keep you hooked, is that they're actually going to take credit for what you've done. So it could look like something like, oh yes, if it weren't for the fact that I didn't, send you to piano lessons when you were a child, you wouldn't be this so successful now with piano, or something like that, because I recognized your talent and I sent you to piano lessons. Or something like, well, I worked so hard, and I worked extra hours after work so I could earn enough money so that you could have this or that, so now you can enjoy this. So taking credit for your success, even feigning support, like a form of gaslighting, where maybe in one moment it might serve them to support you. Oh yeah, you're doing great. And then as soon as it doesn't serve them to support you, they're not supporting you. And then again, you're getting really confused. You're like, okay, do they support me or don't they support me? I'm very confused about this. Sound familiar? Just like when you were a child. Crossing your business boundaries. Okay, this one is interesting because and this sounds kind of weird, but just imagine like, let's say you're at work. Let's just say that you've got a workplace, like you've got a job, and you're giving a presentation to like a room full of people you work with, and you're all in your business suit or you're at the front. And then like, your mom comes in the back door and just starts going, hi, honey, hi, I like your hair. You look so pretty. And you're just like, oh, you're just like so embarrassed. Or so that's an example of a narcissistic parent crossing your business boundaries, like not respecting that this world is yours, okay, and not theirs. So if whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a job or you have a profession, that is your world and it has nothing to do with them. And they don't need to be crossing over into your world in any way. So maybe you can think of something for yourself where that's showing up. Crossing your business boundaries, that is a big, big sign of a narcissistic dynamic. Not respecting your boundaries as an adult who has a profession in an area of expertise. Okay. So how is this affecting your business? Well, your inner child's responding to the past. So if you're in a just completely open, non-modified relationship with this kind of parent, it doesn't matter how well you think you can handle it. Your adult may be able to rationalize, but your inner child, every time you interact with that parent, and then something like all those examples we just went over, or any other example, those things happen. Your inner child is getting triggered over and over again, and you're just getting re-traumatized over and over again. And it's stopping you around all those things we talked about, all those fears of visibility, of being successful, of showing up as the expert, of having personal growth, not wanting to outshine the parent. Your inner child is terrified of those things and is going to do everything they can to stop you, whether that's making you procrastinate, causing you to be distracted, causing you to have some drama, which probably really isn't drama, but you're perceiving it as drama, things that are taking your attention away, just all sorts of ways that the inner child can stop you. And then, so what do you do about it? Well, okay, here's the thing I'm going to say is, like, at least from my perspective, it's not just as simple as, oh, okay, let's just set some new boundaries. Yeah, okay, you can do that. But if you don't address the inner child, those boundaries are just, they're not going to last. In fact, it can be harder. It can make it harder if you don't address the inner child first, because you're not going to be setting boundaries from a healthy place of autonomy. Your inner adult is not stable. Your inner child is running the show. And if the adult tries to set the boundaries without doing the work of the inner child, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult. But let's just talk about what are levels of contact. And just tell your inner child, if anyone starting to feel triggered right now, just from talking about this stuff, because I know that can happen, just tell your inner child, look, we're just talking. Like, we're not going to make any changes. We're just listening to this person talking. That's all we're doing. So we're not changing anything, okay? All right, so let's talk about levels of contact. First of all, we have no contact, which is just very straightforward. It's just no contact with a narcissist specifically, and it refers to a deliberate decision to cut off all communication and interaction with a person who you have identified as narcissistic. Okay, now I make that distinction really on purpose because I want to just be really clear that you don't have to know if someone is a narcissist in order to decide that the dynamic is unhealthy and you want to create new levels of contact. If you've identified that their behaviors are narcissistic behaviors, not them, but the behaviors, then you have every right to decide that you're going to change the level of contact. I just want to be really clear about that. And then there's also modified contact, or sometimes it's called low contact, with a narcissist, and it's used to describe the strategy for managing or minimizing contact with the person you've identified as narcissistic. Unlike no contact, which involves cutting off all communication, modified contact involves setting clear boundaries and limiting the amount and type of interaction with a narcissist or a person you've identified as narcissistic. So those are the two levels of contact. None at all are modified. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? That doesn't it doesn't necessarily mean that when you choose one, you're going to just stick with it. You could move back and forth. And typically that is what happens, is that you decide, I'm going to just make some changes here because I feel like I need to do that. And then you create a modified contact, something as simple as, it could be something as simple as, you know, I'm going to actually decide that this person can't contact me through like every single channel I have for communication. I'm going to create some boundaries around that. I'm going to say, only contact me through this one way. That's like a modified contact. And then you may find out that doing that creates a lot of pushback. And then maybe perhaps their response is abusive or toxic. And then you might decide, okay, you know, I can't do this. So again, you may go no contact. You may decide to go completely no contact. And then perhaps something changes, you do some work, and then maybe you find after you've done some inner work with your inner child or whatever kind of work you're doing, you may find, actually, you know, I can have a little contact now. It doesn't trigger me. I can do this. Because it just depends on you. And what I'm going to say is, you know, I know you're probably thinking, how do I know if I need to modify contact? I wish I could give you a definitive answer. I wish I could just tell you, oh, this is the answer. Because wouldn't that be nice if someone could just tell you? It's so personal, and you're the only one that has the answer. And I have to tell you that the most important thing to remember when you're making a decision like this is to not betray yourself. Okay, your inner child needs you to choose them over this person. Because that's basically what it's coming down to, is that if you want to heal and you want to be successful and you want to have an impact and you want your life to be peaceful, purposeful, and prosperous, you've got to choose yourself instead of this person. Because what's been happening is you've been choosing this person over yourself over and over and over. So to go back to the question, how do I know if I need to modify contact? it's something that you have to just really look at. You have to say, is this dynamic just stopping me from being, doing, and having what I want in my life? Is it causing me an enormous amount of daily stress and anxiety? Is it causing me to doubt myself? Is it causing me to constantly criticize myself? Is it causing me to walk on eggshells? Those are really common signs that this is something you might want to consider. Is by modifying contact, what you're going to do is you're going to put yourself in a space so that you can, I call this the healing container. You can get into the healing container and then you can start to go inside, because what's happening is with this dynamic, you're distracted. And there's an addiction there. There's a little bit of an addiction. Okay, no judgment. But we're addicted to this dynamic. And we're almost addicted to the drama and the crisis that it creates, because we're distracting ourselves from facing the truth. But when we remove the distraction, the contact, when we remove the ability for this person to get to us, to engage us, to communicate with us, then we have to sit with ourselves and we have to go within. And that's not comfortable. That is not comfortable, because then we have to see what we've internalized from this dynamic. And that's the hard part. That's the part that requires, deep work, and it requires a commitment, and it requires choosing yourself. It requires choosing yourself. Okay. All right.